Good evening. Well, I sure do hope it don't rain this week. I really hope that everyone in here will stay tonight for the banquet. I hope that the next time we go out and eat that somebody will buy my meal. I hope when I get up in the morning that the clothes I'm going to put on are already ironed. I hope that my truck says 48 miles to E. I hope it's 48 miles and not 46 or 5. I hope my wife and I stay married till one of us leaves this earth. I hope that all three of my children are faithful Christians. I hope I get the experience to baptize all three of them into Christ one day. I hope that this church will remain pure and true and solid upon the foundation of Christ for the next 100 years. I hope that one day I'll be standing out in my garden and those rays of sunlight that comes through the clouds will just open up and there will be the Lord coming back to receive me and everyone else. Well, we use the word hope in a lot of ways, don't we? It's almost like the word love. We just we use it pretty extreme. You know, it really doesn't matter to me whether it rains tomorrow or not. I am kind of tired of it. But far too often we use this idea of hope as just this wishy-washy kind of, I really don't care whether my clothes are ironed in the morning or not. You know, it's really not that big a deal. We'll survive. Life will go on. But now when we start talking about marriage and the soul of my children and the Lord's return, that's a little more important, isn't it? You see, at some point for us, hope has got to go from this wishy-washy kind of really don't matter to understanding what the Bible presents when it presents the word hope. Because it is important. It does matter. When we began to define the word hope, the way the Bible defines it and the way God uses it, it's more toward the latter end of that spectrum of how I just used it. Or we say everything from, I don't know why that's there. We say everything from, I hope the Predators will win tonight. I hope that I have enough money to pay the bills. I hope that one day I get a new car. The list could just go on and on and on. To the point that if we're not careful, hope becomes almost the exact opposite of the definition of it, according to the Bible. Hope becomes a doubt. Hope becomes a reality that is either beyond comprehension or capability. And thus we began to hope for, I hope next year I'll make $1 million. It's not reality. It's possible, but it's not likely. And thus we take what the Bible presents to be something that is a confident expectation into something that is not even a reality. How does the Bible use the word hope? And my prayer is that after tonight, I don't hope you'll use the word less. I wish that you will use the word less. And my prayer is that I will use the word less, so that when we do use it, it really has meaning. The Old Testament The Hebrew word that is translated hope is defined by the words to wait or to set one's focus on. You and I would probably define that as patience. Maybe perseverance. Well, and it is amazing that in the Bible there's at least 2 passages that talk about how hope works patience and perseverance. You see, when the Hebrew audience heard this idea of hope, what they had in mind was this waiting for, this setting one's focus or attention upon. And so when you read passages like Jeremiah 29, the context begins in about verse 11 and about verse 8 rather, and goes through about verse 14. It's verse 11 I want to call your attention to. Jeremiah 29 and verse 11, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord." The people are in captivity. The people have rebelled from God. The Israelites are being punished. They're reaping what they have sown. Jeremiah, the weeping prophet, is lamenting over their situation and their circumstance and how awful it is. Their moral decay. The fact that they've turned their back on God and they seem to not even care. And yet through all of that, God is still saying, I've got plans for you. God is still saying, I've got a purpose for you. And then look at how the verse ends. It's not to harm you, it's to give you hope and a future. This is in the midst of a hopeless situation. And God is saying, I want to give you hope. What He's saying to the Hebrew people when they read that is, wait. Wait. Set your focus or affection or attention upon this desire of mine, God says. I got a plan for you. I've got a future for you. The future is filled with hope. If you and I are not careful, we can begin to go into our connotation of the word hope and think, well, maybe, maybe not. God's not saying maybe or maybe not. He's saying absolutely so, but you got to wait. You got to set your focus on it. I have plans for you. Even in the gloom and doom and darkness, God says, I've got a bright future for you, Israelites. And in that is hope. The other passage I call your attention to is found in Job, the 19th chapter. It's in Job 19 and verse 2 that Job says, He breaks me down on every side. Job is actually making accusations toward God in Job 19 in Job 19. And in verse 10, he says, I'm gone. And my hope has been pulled up like a tree. Now, my dear friends over here, they have a tree that has almost been pulled up in their backyard recently. And thankfully it went the other way, right? But the trunk's still there. The roots are still there. There's still this big old mound of dirt. At least it was there Friday night. I don't know if it's still there or not, but it was. The remnants was still there. Job says, God has abandoned me so much that He plucked me up like a tree. There's no roots left. There's no dirt left. It's gone. It's completely gone. My hope is completely hopeless. Now, Job is describing his situation here, and we understand that it is anything but hopeless, but the way he feels like a tree that has been plucked up completely, pulled out of the ground. Nothing. God's gone. God's left me. God's completely abandoned me. And yet in God's response, He's saying, Job, your hope is not gone. Even though you've accused me of taking it away, I'm telling you, wait. You see, there was that idea of patience. Set your attention, your focus, your affection upon me, for I will give you hope. You're not hopeless. In the New Testament, the word translated in the Greek language, hope, has the idea or definition behind it to have a confident expectation of a godly outcome. Now, don't confuse godly with goodly. There's an extra O in the latter. What do I mean by that? Well, there may be a difference between what you think is good and what God thinks is good. So don't come to the word hope. You know, I hope it don't rain this week. I really don't want it to rain this week. But I have absolutely no control over that. And God may determine that it is good for it to rain this week. And maybe a bunch, for all I know. I am confidently expecting for there to be a godly outcome. In other words, God is going to do what God knows is best, and I am confident in that. And obviously this involves things much more important than the weather or clothing or gas in a car or whether we'll go out to eat this week or whatever else. This involves things like eternity and salvation and heaven and Jesus coming back. You see, those are things that we can be confident about and have an expectation. So in Acts 23 and verse 6, Paul is standing before the council, and this is kind of funny to me because he looks up and he says, oh, wait a minute, some of you are Sadducees and some of you are Pharisees. So he looks around the council that he's being tried in, and Paul, in all of his wisdom and his wit, he says, oh, let me bring this up. I'm a Pharisee, okay? I'm the son of a Pharisee, and I want to bring this up in respect to the hope and the resurrection of the dead that I am on trial. Now, obviously, Paul is defending himself here, and he says, listen, y'all got me in here on trial because I am preaching and teaching that Jesus Christ was raised from the dead. But I notice what he also does here. He says, listen, I want you to understand that it is in hope that I preach that. You know what he just said to them? He just said, I am confident with great expectation and anticipation that not only has God raised Christ from the dead, but He's going to raise me from the dead. And then you say, well, what difference does that make? That's all exactly right. Sadducees don't believe in it. Sadducees don't believe in the resurrection. Uh-oh. Boy, ain't Paul a smart dude. So now you get the Pharisees and the Sadducees fighting with each other, and Paul walks out unarmed. He knows what he's doing. He says to the Sadducees, I am confident that there is a resurrection. Why don't you believe in it? And the Pharisees on his side are now we're in this debate over whether the resurrection is true or not. Paul uses the term hope. I am confident by the hope that I have, or in the hope that I have of the resurrection. Not only the resurrection of Christ that I have been preaching, but my own resurrection. It's confidence. It's a confident expectation. Maybe just one more for time's sake, and it's from the Bible reading. In Romans 8, and those 7, 8 verses there, the phrase in hope or by hope appears some 6 times in that passage that Brother Jim read a moment ago. In hope, by hope, because of hope. It is by that hope, in that hope, for that hope. As you close out that context as he read a moment ago, for it is in this hope that we are saved. Now, if you and I put our common vernacular into verse 24 of Romans 8, guess what? Salvation is wishy-washy. Well, maybe not. Can you really be saved or can you not? Well, I hope so. And what we're saying to each other is, I really don't know. In our common vernacular of using the word hope. Far too often, what we're saying is, well, maybe On a good day, if the weather's just right, you notice I said I wanted the clouds to open when I'm in my garden. That's my most peaceful place on earth. And my children keep going with me, then I might change my mind. But right now, it's my most peaceful place on earth, and they're going with me a little more. And I'm glad they are. I hope they're learning something. You know, it's like if all the cards are just right, and we lose our confidence. We lose the expectation. We lose the anticipation of a godly outcome. That's what the word means. Now abides faith, hope, and love. Now abides. What is faith? Hebrews 11 and verse 1. It is the substance of things hoped for. Now, is that a wishy-washy, flying on a whim kind of hope there? Well, if it is, then that explains why some people's faith is wishy-washy and flying on a whim. That's not what the Bible means. The Bible means that faith can be confident. It can be expecting of a godly outcome because of the hope that you have in God. I am confident. And so thus for the Christian, hope becomes an anticipation with great enthusiasm. An anticipation with great enthusiasm that God is going, all things work together for good. That God is going to work all things together for good. In hope, by hope, because of this hope. And notice it's not seen. For if it was seen, why would it be hope? Once it becomes sight, then you don't have to be confidently expecting it anymore. There it is. And so thus, faith becomes sight. And thus why love is the greatest, right? Because faith and hope become sight at the second coming of Christ and our going home to heaven. But yet love remains. We hope for what we do not see. We are confidently expecting the things that we do not see. And so tonight I just want to ask you, as we close, is hope real for you? Do you have a confident expectation? Let's just paint a picture here for just a moment. Do you have a confident expectation that, I always hoped that one day I'd get to graduate with a doctorate degree? I didn't mean that wishy-washy. No, I had a confident expectation that as long as my wits stayed about me and as long as the Lord provided the opportunity, that's what I would do. It was real. It's a picture that I painted in my mind. There was a time when I hoped that I would graduate high school. That was about all I hoped for. But it was a confident expectation of mine that one day I would walk across the stage and I would get a diploma. I wasn't wishy-washy about it. I was going to dedicate myself to it and complete it. What is our picture of hope? You see, the things that we picture, that we have confidence in and expect to occur, what are they? Well, I really don't expect to make $1 million next year, okay? And I'll be all right when I don't. That's not a real picture of hope for me. But what is? Well, I have a confident expectation that God's going to return in the form of His Son. And He's going to come in the clouds. I have a confident expectation that all of us, if it were to be right now, will go meet the Lord in the air. I am confident of that. That is my picture of hope. My picture of hope says that that when I get to the eternal place of the righteous that we call heaven, Jesus will be there. God will be there. I am confident that there'll be men and women out of this book that'll be there, along with maybe some of my loved ones, my family members, that'll join me there. That's my picture of hope. Hope is real. I have this confident expectation that when I get there, there'll be no more death. There'll be no more temptation. There'll be no more suffering. I have a confident expectation in that. That's hope for me. In what could always be a hopeless situation. Let me challenge you tonight. As you go about this week, I still want you praying every day for the elders and deacons. Don't quit that. It's not time to stop yet. I want you praying every day. But on top of that, 2 assignments per day this week. I want you to look for somebody that is living a hopeless life. And they need some confident expectation of something. They need to feel that they can trust and have faith in something. Give them hope. Not a false hope. Not a wishy-washy hope. Not a fly-by-the-seat-of-your-pants kind of hope. Something that is true, that is real. Give them the hope of eternity, of heaven, of the promises of God. You see, when I see a picture of hope, I see all of God's promises being fulfilled, and I am confident that all of God's promises will be fulfilled. Among which, this is my favorite, and I leave you with it. 1 Peter 1, beginning in verse 3. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. After His great mercy, who has begotten us again through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, to a living hope. A confident expectation with great enthusiasm that God is going to work out His outcome to an inheritance that is incorruptible, undefiled, and that fades not away. Verse 4, it is reserved in heaven for you and I. I'm confident tonight that somebody in your life needs to hear 1 Peter 1, verses 3 and 4. You can be born again to a living hope. You don't have to be hopeless. You don't have to be squandering around in life. You can be confident. You can have great anticipation and expectation. God has made promises. God is going to fulfill those promises. And if you say, I hope so, you better mean it like God means it. Meaning with confidence. Have I a place reserved in heaven? Have I an inheritance that is undefiled and unfading? Have I been born again to that living hope? Do I? Do I rest assured in confidence of my salvation in Jesus Christ? Do I sit this evening with an expectation that includes enthusiasm of the Lord's return? If not, something's not right. And I beg you to make it right as we stand and sing.